Good luck.
Eric, thank you very much. And I can say over 20 years, Eric, we have been at Cardiac Assist, we've been a very satisfied customer of CDW. So thank you not only for your sponsorship for today, but also for being a data equipment provider. You do a great job. I am in the medical device space, and we have a very particular set of needs in data. But today I want to introduce you to maybe a little lesser known or lesser thought of manifestation of data, and that's the manufacturing shop floor. I'm going to introduce Kevin Haggerty. Kevin is the president of IACTEX. They are a Pittsburgh and Buffalo area company that's in year 3 of a commercialization of its OpSmart technology. That's technology that gathers, manages, coordinates, and generates data from the shop floor. And Kevin and his team of collectively probably over 10 decades of experience in many different industries of manufacturing have had some very, very formidable results leading to performance improvement that have generated competitive leapfrogging. They've generated M&A tears. They've generated very significant strategic impact. And with the advent of today's or tomorrow's third wave of the internet, if you will, the machine-to-machine, Internet of Things, however it's called, Kevin's team is showing that this technology really can be viable and productive and practical for a wide range of production of process industries. And what's even more important, beyond even financial implications, we're finding that there can be a very significant other impact. That's one of HR, that the C-suite can finally now create a culture of internal accountability to every level of the organization automatically, without recurring labor cost. So I think it's going to be tremendously impactful as the decade moves on, and it's going to be a very exciting world that IACTEX is in. So Kevin Haggerty.
Thank you, John. It's great to be here today. I did go to Carnegie Mellon. I'm very fond of the Pittsburgh area. And what I'd like to do today is, as John mentioned, get the practice going. I want to talk to you about little data. I know we're here at a big data conference, but the little data is what you need to get quality big data that you can use. In particular, I want to talk about the manufacturing environments. And the history of manufacturing data, as we look at it, has been traditionally driven by external reporting requirements. Wall Street, customers, vendors, the government, and then the business systems that emerge to support that are the ERP systems, the business systems. Everybody's familiar with ERP. Everybody's cool with that? Okay. But most of the data we get actually comes from the shop floor in one form or another. And there's a dilemma associated with that, is that we're summarizing a bunch of activity, and there's a data risk that's associated with that. Is that data passes through the hands of humans in its summarization, it gets transcribed, and ultimately even the data we're using today has a little bit of unreliability associated with it. From our perspective in the conversation today, moving forward, what we want to talk about is the other problem and solve both of them at the same time. The other problem is it really doesn't give us the insight we need to run our operations better and compete better in the marketplace. So with that, I'd like to take a look at a simple product, concrete block. Could be candy bar, could be Advil, could be could be dishwashers. Doesn't matter what we're making, but all the principles I'm going to talk about do apply. So for the purposes of illustration, I am going to use one of our concrete manufacturing customers as a way to discuss the topic. So we're going to have a diagram here that does illustrate the way a concrete block gets made. You have raw materials, they get weighed out, they get metered, they get put into sequence, they get mixed, they get delivered to a hopper ahead of a forming station, they get put on steel pallets, flows through to a rack, goes through the curing system, After an appropriate amount of time, it comes out the other side, gets delivered to the dry side, where it may go through some specified finishing operations. It may go, typically through a cuber and a wrapper, and ultimately it gets put to the yard. So all along this process, there's lots of little data that's happening that's typically not being recorded by anyone or any system. So let's evaluate this. So obviously there's output that's clear. Most of the transactions that go to ERP have something to do with the material going to the yard because that supports the customer relationships and all that kind of stuff. But how about the efficiency? How well do we make the things we make? Do we really know? Very commonly, world class might be pegged at 85%, and the average plant in this particular industry would be 60%. Now, one of the things that happens over time is these management groups have built these management reports that are summarized. They have allowances, they have assumptions, and they sit there thinking that they're 92% efficient. So the first thing that actually happens when you start using the system is you begin to realize I'm not as good as I think I am. When you document all the little wait time and bottlenecks that are happening every 10, 20 seconds out there, it adds up, makes a big difference. So the opportunity to improve is in the neighborhood of 20 to 30, 35%. Depends on how far you think you can get. So the question is, how do we attack the opportunity here? So another way of thinking about this is thinking about this as hidden capacity. There's nuggets of gold out there in the plant that we have to find. Not big chunks of gold, but little hunks. Most of big data that we think about, we see it's about marketing and engaging the customer. It's about sales. But there's lots of opportunities within our own works as to how we can become better companies. So to get at this, we need to get some insight as to where these opportunities present themselves. So what I'd like to do is talk to how we get at this. And you might say, geez, I've heard of automation before. Aren't people doing this stuff already? How many people would have that reaction? Not so much? A little bit? Okay. So the answer is, I'll stipulate as no, and I'll stipulate no for the following reasons. First problem is the data. The data they're trying to capture is coming from the equipment vendors. They have their own parochial data that's interesting to running that machine, but they don't really provide feedback for the manufacturing process. All right? It's not complete. Okay? You got this big long process. We saw all those steps that things are going through, and there's ins and outs and yields and all kinds of things going on through the process as you look at it from a performance point of view that you're just not getting your arms around. Apologize for the inadvertent click there. The other thing is, when you start putting these systems together, it requires lots of expertise, and it's a complex problem. So the people that have taken a run at it, they've spent a lot of money doing it, and a lot of them have done great jobs, but it's not an affordable technology that's available to the whole supply chain. That becomes the problem. So what's the need? The basic need is we got to collect the incremental small data at all the points along the process. So when we go and approach an environment, they may or may not have devices there that we can take advantage of in shadow. But if they don't, we will square off everything they need to get a complete data set. If you don't have a complete baseline data set, your metrics of performance are not going to stand up. So obviously this becomes independent of equipment, and even the same equipment vendor year to year will have different data associated with their packages, and they start emerging. Some of them have databases, some of them don't. Some have registers, some of them don't. It's a financial nightmare to try to just get the data at level one. We've been able to come in and outfit the entire plant for $5,000 or less. So all of a sudden we're in a market opportunity that these people aren't necessarily being approached at all. So this is great. We got the little data coming from all these sources. But now we got to take all that data and we got to combine it and take that raw data right up to the ERP system. And as I alluded to, in order to do that, you really have to have a lot of moxie, a lot of talent, a lot of knowing what you're measuring, knowing how to get it, knowing how to reliably advance it through the process, have the backups and all the things that Eric suggested. So what I'd like to introduce you to is that we've actually taken the whole process and built a single out-of-the-box system that you can deliver that takes care of this and allows you to model any industry. So how do we do that? Don't have a lot of time to get into all the details here, but I do want to give you a sense of the challenge that's there. I won't give you all the details of how we do all the steps, but we do have all this data coming at us from the various pieces of equipment out there and the devices we add in order to get the complete data set we need. Some of that data may go through a vendor's database, may go through their panels. Ultimately, it's going to make its way into the in-plant OpSmart database, guaranteeing a level of collection. A lot of these devices, they don't keep data for any more than 10 seconds or something like that. So if you're not polling and capturing, you're going to lose some of the data. We're typically sending up 30,000 transactions a shift into the database that's been designed to store and provide statistical measures about performance. The real-time alerts and everything you get that goes through your phones are all provided through our OpSmart website. Now, to finish the jaunt, though, we got to go all the way to the ERP system, right? So the ERP system has certain communication things. The biggest thing would be your item code, right? What do you call this? Call it a potato, right? So you got to use the same naming convention to tie your data together. All these little nuances that make it work. So we upload to the business system maybe 200 to 1,000 transactions. I don't know if you remember on that first screen, but I talked about 300 entries where they put it into the ERP system. Why do they hover around 200? Because if we ask our people to do any more reporting and data entry into the system, they freak out. No more, man, we can't do it. And oh, by the way, we didn't really trust it, so when we ask them to do more, you think you're just going to get more of this going on, right? That's what happens. So my question, now what's interesting is the ERP systems will take more data. So if you do send it more data, we've got 30,000 transactions. We can roll it up any way you want to make your existing ERP and analytics systems more robust. But I got a question for you. If you were to look at that data model, where do you think the big data is being stored? It's in the OpSmart database because it's got the 30,000 transactions. It can do the analytic basis that you need for big data. So when you do it right, good things happen. All right? In addition to getting 100% reliable data as a foundation for your reporting system, you get a solid foundation, and better yet, you get to invent new applications because you got reliable data you never had before. So I'm going to spin through a quick series of applications that are unique to us. They may look familiar, but the fact that it's out of the box and up and running the first week you have your system, that's what's different. So you get new metrics and KPIs, measures you did not have before. Your planning and scheduling improves dramatically because you are truly aware and you have learned standards about how you make the things you make, which leads to better customer service and inventory management. It becomes simple to use. Everything the operator needs is on that smartphone and the user interface that's now available throughout the universe. And they don't have to do as much paperwork. Operators love not doing paperwork. All right? This is not actually unique. A lot of people have been doing it. If you go to Six Sigma, you get total quality management people coming in you, and they give you a 6-month contract to teach you how to think and be better. They get to the end and they say, okay, now go ask those operators to give us more data. Those same guys we didn't trust before, get more data out of them now. So you want them reporting 2 hours a day instead of a half hour a day. Do you think that that works? Absolutely not. To have the tool you need, apologize for the showmanship here, to have that tool available to you out of the box in the first week of use of the system is fantastic. We're going to use an example of that in our customer experience as we go next. Because we have a much more precise understanding of what it really costs to make the things you make, all those gross assumptions that they're making up there in the accounting department about standard costing, they're starting to look at us for their costing. Update our they want to use our standard costs to update their ERP system. So we're giving the C-suite the tools they need to compete. We kind of have talked about efficiency, we've talked about profitability, we've talked about improving our performance against the competition. The last one about reshaping the market, that becomes interesting. Like all relationships in the marketplace, service is a part of it. So we have customers and vendors who are automatically sending each other wear and tear information. Now my equipment partner can start making parts for me before I place an order and have a 2-week delay in my production schedule because nobody saw it coming. Things start clicking, things start happening, and when we talk about the Internet of Things to come, that's the kind of thing we're really talking about at the granular level. So I'd like to thank you for this part. I'm going to ask you to pretend I'm Joe Taft now, one of our customers from the Northwest. Joe is the director. He's the third-ranking official in this organization, and his title is Director of Manufacturing. He has 18 brick and block plants, so not just concrete block, but also clay brick. And he used this tool. We installed it about a year ago, and after 5 months of usage, he began challenging his team. And it's difficult to explain everything at once. Most of you, anybody know what an OEE waterfall really looks like? Each one of these little blocks represents a lost efficiency. So when we talked about going from 100 down to 60% efficiency, each one of these little blocks represents a root cause of how we lost production. He looked at the depalator, this simple little thing about this big in the production line, and he said, that thing cost us 36 hours of production. Now this is data that was never captured before. Nobody asks an operator to report everything that ever happened, right? So he saw that, he said, that seems to be an opportunity for improvement. So using our dynamic dashboard, he clicked on into the details. He saw that the block sticking to the pallet is the leading cause of the pallets sticking. Yeah, block 27 hours. Just quickly in his head, he said, hey, and this all happened in one meeting. We're just casually looking at stuff. That's $5,000 a month. I can put $60,000 towards that problem, and I'll be a better, more efficient company. So he did form a group. He did another quick analysis, said this is a persistent problem. It's not a one-time thing that maybe will never happen. This is a real problem happening every day now. So he changed raw material procedures, making sure that they did a better job of inspecting it as it came in. He spent money to invest in treating the raw materials to get them ready to mix properly. And he scheduled the operators for training to revisit, are you managing the moisture as you're making the product? A second example is after we accumulated learned standards and we got ready to update the standards for planning, scheduling, costing, and execution, we noticed some patterns. And the way that process worked, if you may remember, it goes from the forming station to the loading elevator and moves off. What we were seeing is the block machine was kicking it out, waiting, kicking it out, waiting, kicking it out, waiting. That's the most expensive piece by far in the whole facility, that when these plants are designed from the ground up, you never slow the machine down. So they were living with a product mix that had prevented them from certain performance goals, but also their material handling was costing them dearly. And on the dry side, they had some backup things that were going on. So by truly identifying the bottlenecks, the data never existed before, but because we were able to guide them right to the problem, they were able to fix the problem. So they sunk money into fixing the material handling devices to move the product in and out of the kiln. And they actually launched a redesign for the dry side to accommodate the new and modern finishing things that they were doing to get customer business, but not realizing it was costing them efficiency in production. So even though they're charging 3 times as much, it's taking 4 times as much to make it. So you got to get a clear picture on where you're really making money. The other thing they did was they trained the operators. You know what? If you got a 9-second gap and you're only using 6-second cycles, slow the machine down. Gets rid of more water, tamps it out, get better mold fill, you get a better product. The yield went up on the dry side by slowing it down. And they slapped themselves in the head. Says, that's what we used to do 15 years ago. Oh, Joe retired, and we never trained the next guy. So here's your institutional knowledge that people have been looking for built into the process. So Joe's conclusion is we could not have found these problems, we could not have solved these problems without the illumination afforded us by this little data converted to big data. The other thing that he challenges his team with is we want to be the best we can be. There's nothing more than I love when we're talking to a prospect is they say something like, we just want to be as good as we can be. We don't know how good we can be, but we believe we can be better. And this is one of those individuals. I will tell you one last thing about Joe. When he bought this system and he went to his management team to buy it, he only had one justification: eliminating the paperwork and making his operators and plant managers more productive and away from the desk. He justified it on that alone, and it does get justified on that. But the nuggets of gold of how to get better, a little bit tough to predict in advance what the ROI is, but if you believe that you can get better and you realize that you're really only running at 60, 65%, every industry is a little different, but there's always that incremental improvement that you can get at when you see the little data and it shows you the big data. Thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions. Anybody ever done a project like this before? Or? No? Well, obviously I get excited about these kinds of projects, but it is a different kind of little data situation that provides great value to people. So it's information technology used to what I like to think is the right purpose, helping us all live a better life and an easier life and a more efficient life. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.